Hello, family, friends, and fans. I'm Fletcher Rhoden, and this is Fletcher Rhoden by the Book, special video edition. So I got the show by the book where I go through my books. I have a lot of them. I've also got a show called Fletcher Rhoden Track by Track, where I go through all my albums. And so I decided to do one on my books, and then I have these three long-form video presentations. They're my stage plays, which I wrote and directed and produced. So they're available on my YouTube channel. You can go to my YouTube channel right now, this YouTube channel, different playlist, and watch the videos in question. All these videos will have a link underneath to the videos. In the case of the books, there'll be links to the books. So today we're talking about Last Tango with Marlon, 2010. So it took a long time between my plays. My previous play was Soul Cancer, and that was like 1998 or 1999 or something like that, around there, 1999, I think. And this one would have been about 10 years later. Yeah. Why did it take so long? Not sure. I really had a great time with Soul Cancer. And I just didn't know. I didn't have those, I had no burning desire to do another play until this idea came around. Now, to be fair, the idea of this play is about the friendship of actors Marlon Brando, best known as the Godfather, and Wally Cox, who's best known as Mr. Peepers from a 1950s sitcom, Mr. Peepers. He also did the voice of Underdog. So these two actors, who couldn't be less alike. I mean, Wally was small and impish, and Marlon Brando was big and tough. But they grew up together in Illinois. So they were childhood friends. And they maintained a friendship more or less all their lives, on and off. And they were really close friends. And some people speculate that they were lovers. And, I'm not even the first person to approach this as a play. The actual idea for the play was my brother's idea, but he wasn't going to write it. And he sat around on it and he talked about what a good play would make, but he never wrote it and he wasn't going to. So I did. And it does make a good play because these two guys, they had a real famous friendship and they were real kibitzers. Marlon Brando was well known as a jokester. And so he and Wally, since they were old friends, they would go on these bits, like they would wrestle in the living room, or they would pretend to be playing a football game, or they would do fencing, pretend fencing, things like that, just to sort of enjoy each other's company. And I always thought that and their wild careers, both of them had ups and downs in their careers, wouldn't that make for a fun show? So I wrote it like that. And it's filled with that. It's filled with imaginary fencing and football games and wrestling matches and flights of fancy. A lot of flights of fancy. They're an outlaw and a sheriff in an old time Western movie, And then they're in a World War II movie, one of those get in and get out sabotage World War II films with a gruff American and a prim British guy. And then and it just goes back and forth like that. There's a lot of those kinds of things, flashbacks, I should say, to their childhood, where they each play their vision of the other in one of these childhood flashbacks. And so there's lots of that. It bounces all around. It moves fast. For a stage play with two guys and one set, it's basically a black box of Marlon Brando's kitchen, sort of, or living room. It really is a lot of action. It never stops. There's singing, there's dancing, there's joke telling, there's personal revelations, lots of flashbacks. The actors were really good. Frank Cavastani as Marlon Brando and Ralph Morrow as Wally Cox. Now I'm not sure about this, but they had different acting styles, that I can tell you. And I'm pretty sure Frank is more of a drama guy, and Roth is more of a comedy guy. Not that they each can't do both, but in this case at least, Frank was bringing his drama, and Wally was bringing his comedy. Now maybe that's because it was the way it was written, but there's so many changes and flights of fancy, as I say, and flashbacks and things that you can't really say that one guy is the straight man and one guy is the comic. You know, Wally does get most of the laughs, but when they switch up and they do when there's suddenly an outlaw and a sheriff in an old western movie, well then Brando gets the comic lines. And Wally Cox is the straight man in that instance. And then there are other things that are dramatic and they're not comedic at all. Um, there's a really cool bit where Marlon Brando tells Wally the story of how when he was in Shattuck Military Academy, they tried to raise these kittens, and some punk cadet found the kittens and threw them out the window and onto a frozen pond outside of the dorm. So it's really powerful. It's not comedic at all. You can't really call one guy the straight man and one guy the comedian. It just doesn't work that way. But you get a lot of comedic flair from Roth. I think he just saw it in the character. Maybe it was written into the character. I'm not taking anything away from Frank. He did a great job. But Frank is more like the drama powerhouse in this piece. And it just worked really well. He's built for it. I like the way he did Brando. He didn't do a Brando impression. He just plays him as an actor, a passionate, frustrated man. He didn't do this. He didn't do the impression. I didn't ask him to. Roth didn't do a Wally Cox impression either, which would be harder to do, but he didn't. He just played him like a character, not like a caricature. And Frank plays Marlon Brando as a character, not as a caricature. And they just both did a great job. There's very little happening in the play that they're not doing. So I have a cameo as Christian Brando at the very end, off stage cameo, and I do the sound effects. So there's lots of sound effects, particularly in the fencing scene. I mean, I'm there on stage and I've got a black curtain and I'm working the soundboard. So I'm doing I'm making sure that their voices are being picked up, and I'm doing sound effects. So during the sword fight, I've got two big knives, and I'm smacking them together, like that. And so I was doing the sound effects, but so it was sort of I did my part, but really what you're seeing is these two guys, and very little else. The sound effects help a lot. They paint an ever-changing picture of what's going on. And all these things, like my other two plays, it's as fact-based as it can be. So the flashbacks during this play are pretty much right out of reportage, either Brando's book or Marlon telling the story. They're in New York and they meet up as, like, after years of not seeing each other, they meet up on the streets of New York and they take a ride on a shopping cart, and it's real multimedia stuff. But it's mostly the guys who are pulling this off, and of course their brilliant director who wrote the thing. I mean, you can't take the material out of this. You can't take the material out, but it's a play, so of course you can't. And I don't need to pat myself on the back over much about it. Let's see. It's also a novella. It's one of my best things as a novella. It's one of my best video things, perhaps my absolute very best video of the three stage plays. It's my best stage play, and it's, I think, my best novella too. But it's hard to say because I have a lot of those, and the competition's pretty stiff. But it's a great novella. It really reads well, and it was really well reviewed as a novella, really well reviewed as a play. I got good reviews all around for this. The novella is available as part of this book called The Novellas, Volume 1. It's half of that book. And there's also a audio book. Those are on Kindle, paperback, and audio book form. So if you want to hear me enact the whole thing, doing both voices, pick up the audiobook. But for now, why don't you go to the link below. The link is to a free presentation of the full-length play on video on my YouTube channel, different playlist. Check it out for free. Like and subscribe. That'll help to find other videos that I've done and other videos that I have coming up and other books and my music. And liking and subscribing is the best way to tune into all this stuff. So do that. Enjoy the play. Tune in again for another analysis, which will be upcoming. And until then, bye, Mary.